Call your sponsor. Call your sponsor.
Incensed. She wanted a manager. And she had said, this group I go to, I have X amount number of, and this group, it's no. She literally had a laundry list of stuff. I said, oh, that's really interesting because there's no, each group is autonomous. It's in our tradition. My suggestion would be to call your sponsor and also go to the business meeting, because that's where God is seen, in the business meeting. And she was not having it. She was like, I called GSO. No one was able to help me there. I need somebody to come to this group, tell them what to do, because this is not okay. You know what I mean?
Right.
She was having a moment. And so yeah, I will never forget that.
That is really funny. That is really funny. She was parenting on the meeting and wanted to speak to the manager of AA and the group. That is hilarious.
Of all of AA.
Well, that's it.
Straightened out.
Well, that's the same thing. When I came in, I wanted to see the head of AA because I always look for the shortcuts, So I was like, okay, who's in charge? Who do I have to scheme and scam and manipulate to win around here? And the answer was no one. It's a program of, self-appraisal. It's a program of self-acceptance, honesty. And I'm like, well, that's for the birds, You mean I have to meet myself where I'm at? What the hell? And the other thing is, as you were talking and we were talking about the principles and tradition and character, and it goes to the concepts. And the thing is they were trying to get us on board with the way society worked back in that day and age, right? Men of principle were men of principle, like you and I talked about before. A handshake was your contract. There was just a certain decorum that was expected, and the principles and the traditions, all of that was trying to get us, wild, crazy alcoholics breaking all the rules aligned with this decorum. But in today's world, we are the decorum. Who else is operating with these type of principles? Who else is saying, oh, actually don't pay for that because we want to make sure we're responsible so that we don't have a deficit? Where are they?
It's interesting that you brought up government, and I don't want to go too into politics but I think that there is this thing of trusted servant, right? That, I think their government servants are their servants. They are representing the people. And I think what happens is there is a shift in the power dynamic, and that these leaders or politicians end up becoming leaders, right, and not servants of their constituency and speaking on our behalf. And it flips this whole thing where, I think it's rampant in social media. It's I'm being trained to follow people, and I think it's inherent for me in human nature. And I mean, you always talk about this, you put me on a pedestal, there's nowhere for me to go but fall, I will fall down, definitely, And so it's I think it's part of human nature for me to want to put someone up and put someone down. It's what you always talk about, above or below,
Right.
And I think it's as I stay spiritually connected to myself, there's a certain leveling off that ends up happening when I'm connected.
Right. Well, and I think this is a perfect segue into the Jay Shetty thing.
Okay, let's talk about
it. Because you just said, when we elevate ourselves, that, we get too high up there, and the world has a way of bringing us right size. And also one more thing on the politics is I'm happy to report that today, when I'm talking about the politics, it's very easy to be like, I'm not talking about a side. I'm talking about just like what you said. As a whole, they have forgotten that they are our trusted servants and we are their employers.
Yep.
And it's flipped on its head. And so here we are, and we've fallen into the unconsciousness of like, oh, okay, tell us what to do, and forgotten our power as well. But this Jay Shetty thing, I know that you just read all these articles, and I want to hear your thoughts on, did you hear about him and his uncovering?
Okay, so I didn't, someone told me about it this week, and so I didn't delve too deep. My understanding is that there was an article, and then it's just gone viral in the sense of like his story is not 100. Apparently, the monastery that he was supposedly at, some former lover came forward and was like, no, it was actually in London, not in India, whatever, teachers or whatever failed to, comment on it, whatever. And so he's like being, I think that the thing that's viral, right, is that his story is not 100% true and accurate. And he's kind of filled in some blanks to whatever, make it look more dramatic and appealing. And I guess everyone has been, so of course I had to go to his social and see like what's going on. And so he's like continuing to post, that's the strategy. Continue to post and you don't acknowledge, you don't block, you don't turn off comments, you just continue to do your thing as if it's not existing, and then it will eventually go away is what that's the game plan, for damage control these days. It's because by engaging with it, you're just continuing to feed it. And so what will happen is thousands of comments. Yeah, but why don't you just reply about the elephant in the room, Jake, and blah, 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 which is, all the stuff. And, let's see what happens in like the next 2 weeks. I think like something else will happen, and that I don't necessarily think cancellation is a thing so much these days. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think before what's happened is that there's no conversation. There's just either cancel or not, And so what ends up happening is what the strategy is, which you just ignore. He's posting like nothing's happening. And he has his whole marketing, whatever thing, and he's got his rollout. And that rollout is still happening, irregardless of this other thing going on,
Yeah.
So tell me, what are you...
Well, that's what I wanted to know was, what are your thoughts on him and this? And then this is what I heard, is that he was in the monastery for 3 years, and that it was discovered that it was like a weekend, which is a big difference. And then just that he was always hustling to present himself as something more than what he was. And it's so... The part that's interesting for me is he would come across my For You page and come across things. And for me, there was no there. Like, I just was always like, I feel like I'm supposed to be into him. And no matter what I do, it doesn't resonate. I love his smile. I love his eyes. He always comes across so warm. But there was never something I hooked into and was like, that Jay Shetty, man, he's got some answers, right? It just always looked like a light. He always looked very happy. And then another guy came forward and said that he wrote a book. This person wrote a book called The Urban Monk, and that somewhere along the way, Jay Shetty started referring to himself as the Urban Monk, and the guy had to write a cease and desist, and Jay Shetty did, but it locked on and was attached to him in articles for years, and he never corrected it, right? So
yeah.
That was kind of my thing. I wanted to know like your internal thoughts, not even the PR stuff, but like your thoughts on him.
Listen, I think what I've learned is that people are people, and what I've got from him has helped me along my path. And he's never really been on a pedestal or not for me. You know, he's just like another person that's sharing shit. And, you know, I think he's been useful to my path. Would I buy his book or anything? I haven't bought his book. He's not at the top of my list. I don't think we've ever brought him up on this podcast as being one.
No, he hasn't. No,
I think that he is a light. And yes, this thing of taking people's stories was also part of the article, which I forgot. And then what happened was he started attributing them back to people, which he initially wasn't doing until he was called out many years ago. And so he went back through his files, either deleted and or started attributing them to the correct sources. But for me personally, like, I think like there's stuff that he says that resonates. But he's not like an Andrew Huberman for me, or any of these other people that we've brought where it's like, oh my God, like it's like download central for me. And it's fascinating, this whole world.
Yeah. I think so too. And that's why, you know, the minute I heard monastery stuff, I was like, I want to hear what Sam thinks. Like, I know I have no experience with it whatsoever. But I just found it really interesting and I agree with you. Like, I don't think anybody should be canceled. I think there should be conversations. I think, you know, everything that people want to cancel someone for should be a conversation within our culture where we know we're going to have a conversation where there's not a right way and no one has to come out on top. And at the end of the day, we can all agree to disagree, but we will grow as a culture if we just have, you know, thoughtful conversations about this stuff that comes up. I just heard somebody say in a meeting today that they know when something comes up and they feel, you know, uneasy about it in their own life, that it's an opportunity for them to look within themselves, you know? So like as a whole, that's what this stuff is. Okay.
The Jay Shetty thing is when I look inward, I think what comes up for me is how I want to belong. I want to be liked. And what have I done to manipulate my story or exaggerate on things in order to get that, right? What have I done in my life to manipulate things, even in business, to be seen in a certain way? And that's, for me, that's the self-examined part of this whole scenario.
Oh my God, I love this. I'm sorry. I know we're at our final 5 minutes. I got one more thing. I love this so much because I grew up as such a liar and such a misrepresenting and exaggerating. And by the way, it was modeled for me. I didn't just like come out as a 4-year-old and be like, I'm going to be a liar. You know, that's what was shown to me, and that's how I operated. And I got caught so many times, so embarrassingly, so humbling. And then I come in the rooms and exactly what we're saying, where it was like these principles and this character. And I was like, oh my God, no way. And I would try it on for size. And I became addicted to this way of life. Like, I want to tell the truth so bad. I have no interest in misrepresenting myself because now I become addicted to this feeling where, like, one day I was in a very prominent college for an interview in the chancellor's office, and they asked me what college I went to, and I was like, this is where, you know, this is my 4th interview, it's in person, I'm with these people who have doctorates, and this is where I blow everything. And I just said, I don't have a college degree, and, you know, this is where I was at, and this was what was happening in my life, and I went to, you know, 6 months of community college, and that's about it, and that's all I have. Thank you for your time. And they were like, you're hired. I got hired in that environment, and it turns out I hated it, but because they appreciated that not everybody came from the same background, and they were excited to employ me. It was crazy.
I love that story. It's so good.
Thank you. So that brings us to our final 5, which, the whole thing was a question of your Roman Empire. But now I would like to hear about that thing that's either funny or negative that is your AA Roman Empire that you're like, that always stuck in my craw.
So the past week, I've been the stuff that's been coming up consistently is the forest and the tree, and how I always am focused on a tree, and I don't see the beauty of the forest. And for me, the tree is what's wrong, what's missing, what could be better. If only if this were different, then, and that tree is forever my focus. And it's been this practice of noticing that I'm focused and hyper focused and obsessed with that tree and smiling at the tree and saying, "Thank you, tree. I see you." And I'm just going to zoom out a little and see the beauty of the entire journey. And know that this tree is beautiful. It's beautiful, even more beautiful when it's seen within the entire picture. So, to be a little bit more thing is, I didn't have a job. Now I wanted a job, right? Now I have a job. I think I'd like a different job. There was an income. I have income. Now I want more income, So I don't have a boyfriend. I'd like a boy, so it's like, whatever that thing is du jour, that's my thing. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, totally. I remember coming to California and going to the ocean and sitting and watching and asking God for me to see a dolphin go by and, to show me God's love for my presence there in this beauty, right? And a dolphin goes by and I'm like, oh, it's gorgeous. And then I'm like, God, do you want to show me a seal too? And literally a seal goes by in the next 5 minutes. I'm like, wow, so great, beautiful. Hey, God, can I get a whale? And that's the thing. It's like, there's never enough. It will never end. So I love that answer. I get it. For me, the one that still sticks out is after a meeting early on where I said something about I was in fear. And this is in the negative realm. And this guy came up to me afterwards. He was like, listen, you can either be in fear or faith, but you got to pick one or the other. Are you going to be with God or are you going to be in fear? And I was like, oh my gosh, I thought he was so profound at the moment and just felt horrible, right? I can't believe I was in fear. That was horrible. How could I have been in fear and not had faith? And, now as I've gone along all these years, I just think about that. And that was such misinformation, you are okay to have faith while you're in fear, to have fear while you're in faith. That's just natural and very human. And the more I try and exile, one or the other, the worse things are going to get. So.
We did it again.
We did it. We're so fabulous. So y'all bitches, y'all go call your sponsor. Make sure you check in with us and tell us, how good we're doing. And talk soon. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Misty.
Call your sponsor.
Bitch, call your sponsor.
Call your sponsor.
Send us an email with comments, questions, or concerns, bcysponsor@gmail.com.
Don't forget to rate 5 stars.